anyways, kids, we are going to screen capture the lesson. I'll post it. So if you're absent right now, you know where you can go for it. Okay? All right. So, understanding integers. We're going to start off talking about understanding integers. Integers are a new set of numbers. You have learned about the counting numbers, whole numbers, fractions, which are rational numbers, and now you're going to learn about integers. Okay? And they are a totally new set of numbers, which you already know exist and are ready to go. All right? We're not going to use Nearpod right now. Okay? We're just going to look into our book. Okay? And it talks about what integers are, the basics of it. Okay? And all we're really talking about are the positive and the negative numbers. Okay? So it says what are integers, and it goes on to explain how you can compare integers to the degrees of temperature measured on a thermometer. Okay, so thermometers basically represent a number line, and they represent integers. Okay? If you have a 0 and you have positive numbers which are above 0, and you have negative numbers that are below 0. Question, Aiden?
Can I get a fruit out because I accidentally spilled ink on it?
Yes, you may. Alright, so anyways, when the temperature goes below 0, it is written with a negative sign. What are you doing?
I was wondering if I could get a paper towel because I accidentally spilled ink on my
How
desk.
did you get ink? You need to go wash that then. Okay, so anyways, it goes on. When the temperature goes below 0, it is written with a negative sign. Okay, so 6 degrees Celsius is 6 degrees warmer than 0. So if you don't see a positive sign, okay, you assume it's positive. Okay, if you're working with a negative integer, it will give you the negative sign or symbol for sure. So negative 6 degrees Celsius, okay, is 6 degrees colder than 0. So notice how they've kind of said it's 6 degrees colder, and they've referred to the distance as a positive. Okay, even though in this you started with a positive, and in this you started with a negative, they refer to the distance as a positive. Okay? Now, in this situation, when you have 6 degrees Celsius and negative 6 degrees Celsius, the distance from 0 is the same. So in other words, what they're saying is you have a positive 6, the distance from 0 is going to be 6 units. You have a negative 6, the distance from 0 is going to be 6 units. This just happens to be a negative, and this just happens to be a positive. Okay? This distance represents absolute value. Okay? Whether it's in the positive or the negative, it represents that distance is considered a positive, and it is considered an absolute value. Alright? So anyways, the book then goes on to give you more information about it. It says a number line can show numbers like a thermometer. Numbers that are the same distance from 0 are called opposites. In other words, they have the same distance. So in that previous slide, I showed you the distance from negative 6 to 0. Okay? Negative 6 to 0 is 6 units. The distance from positive 6 to 0 is 6 units. Okay? So that means they have the same distance from 0, and they are considered opposites. They both have 6 units from 0. Alright? Integers are made up of the counting numbers and their opposites and 0. So basically, you're talking about all the numbers on the number line. That's what we talk about when we talk about integers. Okay? Now, 0 is neither positive or negative. The opposite of 0 is 0. Okay? I know that doesn't sound reasonable because 0 is neither positive or negative, but the opposite of 0 is considered to be 0. Alright? That's just one of those math rules. The book then goes on to talk about absolute value. This is something that I've gone over with you here and there before, especially when we're talking about the coordinate plane. Absolute value of an integer is its distance from 0. The distance is always positive. Okay, whether you're going down to the negatives, you're counting, so that's the absolute value, and that is a positive number. Okay? So in this example, the absolute value of 6 is written as 2 lines on each side of 6, and those lines mean absolute value. Absolute value of 6 equals 6. Notice the absolute value of negative 6 is a positive 6. So absolute values are always positive because you're accounting. Alright? So, another example of some information. Okay? You've learned how to read the counting numbers. So you've been doing the counting numbers since you had that little number line on your desk. Okay? And this chart shows how to read negative numbers. Okay? Note that negative of negative 3 equals 3. That is the opposite of negative 3. Okay? So 3 is the opposite of negative 3. And that's when they have parentheses. So these parentheses around negative 3 with that negative symbol, they're talking about the opposite of it. Okay? So when you see just negative 3 by itself, it means negative 3. When you see a negative 3 with parentheses around it and a negative right there, that is the opposite of negative 3. That would be positive 3. If you see the bars, you're talking about absolute value of a negative. So in this case, the absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. Okay? So when you look at negative 3, if it's written like that, it's right there. If negative 3 is written with parentheses around it, they're talking about its opposite, which is positive 3. If you're talking about the absolute value of negative 3, you're talking about the distance from 0, which is 3 hops, which is a positive, because you're counting. It's a counting number. Alright? So, here we go. Find the following points on the number line. Okay? Somebody go find positive 10. Slide the dot up. Go to Kiera. Go do it. Find us positive 10. Good. Okay, next number. Go find negative 10. Matthew. Alright. Good. Notice how these are the same distance from 0. 10 units, 10 units. So this is opposite of this. Okay? So if I said to you, find negative 10, you'd know to go here. If I said to you, find the opposite of negative 10, you would come, oh, there's 10 units, the opposite would be 10 units into the positive. If I said to you, find the absolute value of negative 10, then you're saying to yourself, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a positive number because you counted. So positive numbers over here because they're counting numbers. Okay? So that's what we mean. Let's talk about, I think you can find all those. In your book and in your homework eventually, it will say use the number line below for 1 through 6. Give the integer that each point represents. then write its opposite in absolute value. Alright, here we go. Point A. Okay? Point A. This is point A. What is the integer represented? What is the integer represented?
-7.
-7, right? -7. What is its opposite? What is its opposite? Jaden? Its opposite is +7. What is its absolute value, Casey? What is its absolute value? It's -7. Its opposite is +7. Its absolute value, Abe? Is 7. Its absolute value is 7 because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so its absolute value, -7, has an absolute value of +7. Okay? Now, let's take a look at number 2. B. What is the integer represented by B? Bertie? 4. Okay, so we have B right here. And that is 4. +4, right? So if we look at that, that's correct. What is its opposite then? What is its correct?
Negative.
Yeah, the opposite is -4. So if you have +4 and you want its opposite, it would be -4. Okay? What is the absolute value? Lydia? The absolute value of this +4, the absolute value of +4 is 4. Okay. Alright? What do you know about two different integers that have the same absolute value? Now think about that. You have two integers that have the same absolute value. So if I said to you, here are two integers, +5 and -5. Okay? What do you know about the two different integers that have the same absolute value? So the absolute value there is 5. Absolute value there is 5. What can you say about that?
They're opposites.
They're opposites. Yep. Alright. Which integers do you use for counting? If you were counting, which integers would you use? What would you use? When? Yeah. You're going to use the positive ones because you're counting. How would you read the number -7? Okay. So that was your 20-minute lesson on integers. So when the next time you see this, you'll take notes on it, and then you'll probably get an assignment related to it. Okay? What's that? It's not that hard. Just a different way of thinking about numbers. Take a quick restroom break. Who are you raising your hand about? Yes, so now you may go rinse off your hands. Yes. Yeah. You did a pretty good job of cleaning that desk up.
I saw him doing something with pen.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and that's why we don't play with pens. Inevitably, they break. That's why he could know a lot of words. Now he's got to go home and explain to his parents why his sleeves are all black.
His sleeves were already all black, so that it kind of blends in.
Yeah, he's lucky he the color he's wearing. He's lucky for that. Yeah.
If it was white,
I think he's wearing a blue sweatshirt.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
gray. Then they would have to wear gray.
Somebody open their iPad to today's math material. materials. I gotta see what it looks like on your iPad. See what our materials look like.
Schoology.
Schoology, folder, what do you got? I just wanna take a look